The cabin lights glowed a dull amber against the midnight sky, casting sleepy shadows over the rows of passengers. Somewhere over the Rockies, turbulence gave the plane a little shudder, but most people were too tired to care. Parents dozed with their children. Businessmen snored with open mouths, and a steady hum of engines lulled the cabin into a fragile peace. No one knew that in less than an hour, their lives would dangle on a thread. In row 14, by the window, sat a young woman in her early 30s. Her name was Claire Mitchell, though she hoped nobody recognized her. She wore a gray hoodie pulled low over her forehead, as if hiding from the world, and clutched a worn leather bag against her chest like a lifeline. Inside that bag weren't valuables, no jewelry, no stacks of money, just memories, the kind that still woke her up at night in a cold sweat. Claire wasn't just another passenger flying into Denver that night. She had once been a pilot, and she had sworn never to touch the controls of an aircraft again. The announcement came suddenly, slicing through the quiet like a knife. "Ladies and gentlemen," the captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "If there is a licensed pilot on board, please make yourself known immediately." For a second, no one understood. A few people chuckled nervously, thinking it was some kind of prank. But the flight attendants' faces turned pale as they rushed up and down the aisle, whispering into radios. Then came the gasps. Mothers clutched their children tighter. A man muttered a frantic prayer under his breath. Claire's blood ran cold. She tried to sink deeper into her seat, invisible under her hoodie. She wanted to believe someone else would stand up, maybe a military pilot on leave, or some gray-haired captain flying as a passenger. But row after row remained still. Fear turned the cabin into stone. And then came the moment Claire dreaded most. Her own heartbeat, loud as thunder, and the echo of a voice she thought she'd buried years ago, her co-pilot Jake's last words before the accident. "Flying isn't about you, Claire. It's about the lives that need you to get them home." Her hand trembled. She wanted to stay silent, to keep running, but her fingers rose almost against her will. I'm a pilot." Every head snapped toward her. Disbelief, hope, fear. All eyes burned into her as if she had just admitted she was their last chance. The attendants hurried her forward, their voices shaking. Inside the cockpit, disaster had already struck. Captain Reynolds lay slumped in his chair, his face ghostly pale from a sudden heart attack. The first officer, barely out of training, wrestled with the yoke, sweat dripping down his temples. The storm outside was merciless, lightning flashing across the dark sky, thunder growling like a beast. When the young officer saw Claire, his eyes widened in desperation. "You've flown a 737 before?" he asked, voice cracking. Claire swallowed hard. The dashboard looked both familiar and alien, like seeing a childhood home after years away. It was the same model she had flown the night Jake died. She almost turned back right then. But instead, she nodded, her throat dry. The plane jolted violently. Passengers screamed as trays and cups rattled down the aisle. Claire dropped into the captain's chair, her hands trembling as they hovered over the controls. What if I fail again? What if I kill them too? But there was no time to hesitate. The altimeter was dropping fast. She took the yoke, steadying her breath. "I've got it." For the next 20 minutes, the cockpit became a battlefield. The storm pummeled the aircraft, each jolt threatening to rip the wings off. Alarms blared in rapid succession, screaming warnings of systems overloads. The radios fizzed with static, then died completely. They had lost communication with air traffic control. It was just them now, Claire, the terrified first officer, and 180 souls praying in the back. In the cabin, panic spread like wildfire. A businessman tried to demand answers, only to be hushed by a mother rocking her crying child. A teenage boy whispered, "We're going to crash, aren't we?" And his little sister clung to him, sobbing. No one knew that inside the cockpit, Claire was fighting more than the storm. She was fighting her past. Every flash of lightning brought Jake back to her mind. The night of the crash, the flames, the awful silence after. She had walked away alive, but Jake hadn't. For years she blamed herself. And now, staring at the storm, she almost froze again. Then the twist came. The first officer gasped at his instruments. "Hydraulic pressure's dropping. We've lost part of the control system." Claire's stomach lurched. That meant the plane wouldn't respond the way it should. They'd have to fight it every inch of the way down. She glanced at him, saw the fear in his young eyes, and something shifted inside her. She couldn't let this boy become another ghost she carried. "Listen to me," she said firmly, her voice steadier than she felt. "We're not dying tonight. Do exactly as I say. Together." They fought the crippled jet. Lightning split the sky, turbulence tossed them like rag dolls, but inch by inch Claire guided the plane toward the faint lights of Denver below. Passengers sat in paralyzed silence, some crying quietly, others gripping hands across the aisle. The woman in row 22 whispered, "God, please let her land us." The descent was brutal. At one point, the plane dropped so sharply that oxygen masks dangled from above, and screams filled the air. Claire clenched her teeth, sweat pouring down her face as she wrestled the controls. Her arms burned, her chest ached, but she refused to give in. Then, just as the runway lights appeared through the sheets of rain, another alarm blared. Landing gear malfunction. The wheels weren't locking into place. The first officer's voice broke. "We can't land without them. We'll skid out." "Yes, we can," Claire cut him off. "We'll do a belly landing if we have to. But we're going home tonight." The plane roared over the runway, sparks ready to fly. Passengers braced for the worst. And then, by sheer miracle, the gear locked with a violent clang just seconds before touchdown. Claire seized the moment, pulling every ounce of skill from her soul. The wheels screeched against the asphalt. The jet wobbled, skidded, then steadied. When it finally slowed to a stop, silence hung for a heartbeat, then erupted into cheers, sobs, and prayers whispered into trembling hands. But Claire didn't celebrate. She sat frozen in the cockpit, staring at her own reflection in the dark glass, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. For the first time in years, she felt Jake's presence not as a ghost, but as a guiding hand. She hadn't run this time. She had flown. As the passengers disembarked, many paused at the cockpit door, whispering their thanks. One little girl clutching a teddy bear tugged at Claire's sleeve. "You saved us. Does that mean you're our captain now?" Claire knelt, her voice breaking as she smiled through her tears.
"No, sweetheart.
I'm just a passenger who couldn't stay asleep." The child hugged her anyway. And in that moment, something inside Claire healed. She walked out of the terminal into the cool Denver night, head high, shoulders light. She had boarded the plane as someone running from her past, but she left as someone ready to embrace her future. Because sometimes life doesn't give you a choice. Sometimes it shakes you awake, forces you to step forward, and asks you to be the person others need, even when it terrifies you. Courage isn't about never falling. It's about rising when everyone is counting on you to soar.